Hello, welcome to a special CES edition of One Cool Thing. I'm Dan Costa, editor-in-chief of PCMag.com, and I am joined by Sascha Segan, by Michael Kahn, also of PCMag.com, and a special guest, Brenda Stolyar of Mashable.com. And we're here to talk about CES during COVID, completely virtual. How is this going to work? Sascha, you have thoughts on this. You've started CES coverage, such as it is. Where would you normally be right now if this was a normal year?
So right now I would be in Las Vegas, probably in, my guess is somewhere in the Venetian, having a string of meetings where I meet with different companies and look at their products and handle them and talk to the executives and prepare stories which would then be released on usually Monday morning. So I'd be in my pre-briefs right now. And we're getting a lot of those pre-briefs virtually over the phone or through web conferences this year. But I'm really feeling the lack of two things. First of all, the lack of that tactile experience of the products. This is a hardware trade show, and hardware is hard in various ways. It's hard to make, it's hard to succeed with, but it's also something you really want to put in your hands. And we can't put anything in our hands. And then also, of course, the more programmed, the more programmed way that these press conferences and pseudo meetings are going, how there's a lot more recorded videos, how there's a lot more moderation, letting companies prevent you or allow you to ask certain questions, really removes a lot of the possible serendipity from some of these interviews I would do, and I really feel is cramping my style.
Yeah. Brenda, how's it been covering CES for Mashable? You've covered CES for PCMag in the past, but now you're doing similar work over at Mashable. How's your coverage been so far this year?
I mean, it just feels, I think, even though CES is definitely categorized as like, or I should say well known as like chaotic because we're all over the place all the time. I don't know why it almost feels like chaos. Everybody always like embraces the chaos in a way when you're there, but being at home, it's like a bad kind of chaos because I just feel like without having those physical pre-briefs and seeing people in person and like, you know, having that formulaic schedule that we typically do where it's like, as Sascha mentioned, you have your pre-briefs and then you know that your stories are going to go up for the NDA or for the embargo. And like you have that clear cut schedule and now it just feels like everything's a free for all in a way working with brands. Like, you know, you have your meetings and then they just send out the press release and it's just like everything is happening at once and not being physically there is tougher, which I didn't think it would be because, you know, being there, you're traveling from hotel to hotel and from like location to location all day, and then you're writing all night. And so I thought being like stagnant and in one place would be a lot more organized and easier, but I just feel like everything just feels very up in the air in a way. It's weird. I don't like it. I liked the organized chaos in a way because we were also used to it after doing it, you know, so many times you kind of get the hang of it. So this switch in like protocol is kind of strange. I feel like nobody really knows what they're doing. I don't know. I'm the only one that feels like
it doesn't seem like CES really knows what they're doing either. Having seen some of these virtual exhibits and taken some of these briefings, like it's disorganized in a way that is entirely different than the past. Michael, one of the things that's bums me out the most about not going to Vegas this year is that this is usually when we actually get to meet in person. You're based in San Francisco, I'm in New York. We only see each other once or twice a year, and this is one of those times, so we're going to miss out on that. But you've actually already started covering CES and breaking news. Talk to us a little bit about some of the stories you've already seen and how you're getting information on products that are launching.
Yeah, we're already seeing all these vendors just coming out with products, and right now it's kind of business as usual. It's kind of similar to the previous CES where they're starting to preview the new laptops or new hardware, new technology coming out. So for now, it's kind of the same. It's just sort of that run up to things. But once CES starts, yeah, it'll feel very different because we're used to walking around. We're used to seeing these things for ourselves and holding them and making sure they're like real products. And and so it is definitely it is kind of stressful in the sense that this is one year we don't know what's going to happen, and we're kind of just sort of trying to figure things out like everyone else is. But I expect a ton of new products, just as there were last year, new updates to laptops, to graphics, to even some CPUs. So I think there'll be a lot of interesting news this year too.
If I could give one more thought. So I've been thinking all year about what the post-COVID world is going to look like in terms of things like business travel, and in terms of things like whether or not people are going to go places for meetings. And a lot of the single product events, which we've seen over this year, things like the Apple event, for instance, have gone very, very well in the virtual world. And it seems like virtual is a great way to expand the audience for a small, focused event that not a lot of people have been able to attend, but now everybody can see this focused thing. But in terms of these big things like CES with like tons of people and all of these serendipitous connections and wanting to see trends and wanting to see like 1,000 different things, virtual is really falling down on the job. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the future, in 2022, we see, for you folks watching, tech fans, we see a lot more virtual launches of single products like OnePlus and Apple and individual Samsung Unpacked. Mm-hmm. But the big trade shows come back together.
Yeah, I noticed you skipped entirely over 2021 in that prediction, as if nothing will change in 2021. One of the things I think we should see, if everything proceeds according to plan, is that we're going to see a lot more smart home products, a lot more focus on technologies in the home, the connected home, because we're spending so much more time in our homes. Do you think have you any products coming out yet, Brenda, or have you seen anything? Are you looking forward to anything in the smart home space?
Well, I think, with this pandemic, people are realizing, we're all stuck in like one room for most of the day, or, multiple rooms throughout the house. I think with smart home's an interesting category in general. I think it's something that people sort of dabble in like little by little. Like first they'll get a smart light bulb, and then they'll get maybe a Google Home Mini, and then they'll get, like it's something that like you expand upon and build upon. And I think being home so much now more than ever, we're trying to figure out ways to like make the space more enjoyable, because sitting in one room just sucks. And so whether that's like, a light bulb that can, help you wake up with like the sun, or then like, dims at night to kind of help you fall asleep better. Like we're trying to kind of make our spaces a bit more healthy for ourselves, I guess you can say. And smart home products do that a lot. And so I think we're going to see, as far as trends go, I think we're going to see a lot more products that just make us feel better to be at home.
That's exactly, I think that's a great point. Like I think about stress reduction, and I've got an alarm clock that turns on slowly. The light turns on slowly in the morning to replicate the sunrise. I think there's going to be a lot of focus on that, getting better sleep, exercising at home. All those domestic technology spaces, I think, are going to do really well this year.
Also, Brenda, do you think more young tech-focused people are cooking more this year? Because that's definitely a feeling I've been getting.
I mean, from a personal note, I have been ordering more, definitely. But okay. Yeah, I can't speak for everyone. I am definitely, I think as a whole, I'm sure it's given people more time and more of an opportunity to, say, to kind of experiment with different smart home tech, as far as things like cooking goes. But I'd say maybe the beginning of the pandemic when everybody was like excited and like kind of like, oh, this is a new way of living. But yeah, I mean that probably depends on the type of person. I can't speak for everyone, but I'm sure people have experimented. You know, I think kitchen tech is still very much in its infancy. I think it's not as, you know, things like smart microwaves, quote, or smart ovens and stuff like that. They're pretty still, they're still pretty expensive and still pretty big investments. But your Bluetooth connected things, I think are definitely probably more common. But yeah, I don't know. I think we'll get there soon. But yeah, I'm gonna say I'm like the worst person to ask for that personally.
So
but
Brenda's not doing a lot of cooking is what I'm hearing.
Oh, definitely not. It's really bad.
You make a good point though, that one of the stories that always comes out of CES is LG and Samsung show off these like great connected refrigerators and these connected microwaves, and they've got these great demos in the booth, and everybody writes up the story, and then years go by, no one buys them because people don't buy fridges that often. And the connected, the smart washer dryer, no one buys these products. Like they're not a success in the market, and yet at CES they get a lot of headlines. It'll be interesting to see if that happens again this year when there's no booth to actually show these things off in.
Right. No, they're definitely cool to experience and to see, especially with like hands-on stories. And they're cool to read about, I'm sure. But yeah, it's difficult to want to invest in a smart connected home appliance, especially for the price right now. But hopefully, like what I hope to see is that it just becomes more like a common feature to even have, you know, hopefully that'll be like just the standard, your standard fridge is smart connected. But yeah, right now I think people are hesitant for sure.
So one of the other trends I think we're going to see is a little bit more actual 5G in products that are shipping. I know there's a lot of laptops that are going to come out with 5G connectivity over the next week or so. Sascha, do you think, is it going to be just confined to laptops? Do you think we're going to see any more original or different applications of 5G in the consumer electronics industry?
I mean, we're going to see some 5G phones. TCL has a press conference. They are almost certainly going to bring some low-cost 5G phones. Motorola just pre-announced a bunch of phones that they are showing off more next week, one of which is a relatively low-cost 5G phone. So there will be some more 5G phones around. There will be some 5G laptops, 5G tablets. But I am a little concerned about the level of sort of military scale buzzword deployment that's going to go on with 5G at this show. The CEO of Verizon has a keynote. There are two other panels going on. There's a whole complex of meaningless babble around 5G, AI, and 8K that has been kind of coalescing over the past 2 years that doesn't really ever seem to mean anything in terms of an actual consumer product that people can use. But you know LG is going to say that. You know Hisense is going to say that. Verizon is probably going to say that. But what I really want to see 2 years into this 5G deployment now is Verizon getting up there and saying, we have UWB 5G in more than 60 cities now. Here are some applications which you, with your 5G phone, can go out on the street and do with 5G that you could not do with 4G or 3G. And I don't have a tremendous amount of hope that I'm going to see that, but that is what we need to see.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see it in the next week at CES anyway.
Yeah. So I think 5G has become a sticker that everybody now needs to put on everything, but no one has really shown that actual launch differentiated consumer, I need to have 5G product.
You mentioned 8K, and I think you're exactly right that these are the buzzwords of the show. We can sort of feel it coming before the show actually starts. 8K is going to be one of them. I think we're going to see 8K TVs on. We're not going to see them on the show floor. We're going to see them we're going to see press releases about 8K TVs that are going to ship this year. The sad part being no one can actually watch 8K because there's no 8K content available to put on these TVs. But Michael, are there any tech trends or tech really looking forward to that you think are, you're eagerly awaiting for the next for the CES launch?
Yeah, I'm trying to build a PC actually, and so I expect NVIDIA and AMD to come out with some new graphics cards, but we'll wait and see. But the problem is,
will you be able to actually buy them?
Yeah, no one can buy a graphics card, so that'll suck, and I'm sure everyone will be disappointed. But Intel's probably going to talk about their new Rocket Lake CPU, and so that's a big deal because a lot of people are wondering if they can compete with AMD's new CPUs. And outside of that,
they kind of need to, right? Like they've been taking a beating from AMD this whole year. This has been the year of AMD when it comes to CPUs.
Yeah, definitely. And Intel's just really looking like they're on the retreat almost. There's a lot of concern that they can't really advance their silicon technology beyond.
They've been taking a beating from AMD and Apple.
Yeah, and Apple, and yeah, we'll have to wait and see. It's definitely not looking good for Intel. So, but maybe they can revive some interest in their CPUs if this Rocket Lake chip is as good as it seems. It's already been kind of leaking in some benchmarks, and it seems like it can compete with the AMD Ryzen 5000. But outside of that, I'm just curious if there's going to be a lot of weird, prototypes, and we're already kind of starting to see some prototypes with Lenovo. They unveiled this sort of mini laptop that you can, once you close it into a tablet, you can slap on this controller on it, and it kind of turns into this Nintendo Switch like device. And I expect we'll see like some other prototypes like that from like Razer. They always come out with some weird prototypes that are interesting. So we'll see. There should be some cool technology out there.
Yeah, I'm just afraid we're going to miss some of those announcements because we're reading them, in our email box instead of actually discovering them on the show floor. Brenda, is there anything looking forward to? Any predictions for the show?
It's like that's the thing with I was actually talking to my editor about this yesterday, is that being on the show floor and like hands-on with the products, you get an idea of like the trends that we're going to see this year. And like you said, just like scrolling through our inbox, it's like you have to weirdly piece these things together. So I think ultimately I'm hoping to see just a lot of what's the word? Like a lot of brands not being scared to kind of innovate. I think last year at CES, we saw a lot of foldable displays, and whether it was like, Lenovo had that foldable laptop that they just came out with this year finally, or last year, can't really, 2020, 2021 is all blending together. But yeah, I think I just really want to see brands have fun with their products. I mean, I think for a while now, we're kind of just seeing like the same iterations of things over and over with like one additional feature added in. So I think hopefully for 2021, we'll see brands have fun with things and experiment. That was the word I was looking for. Experimentation. I think whether that is a foldable display for, even more foldable phones, perhaps. That's maybe wishful thinking. But yeah, I think I just really want to see some experimentation. I'm kind of not bored, but I don't know. Things have been really predictable at this point.
The only thing that's been predictable in 2020 has been the relatively lackluster product announcements. Yes. Sascha, I'll give you the last word. What do you expect CES 2021 to look like? How do you think this is going to go?
I think that CES is turning into a surprisingly good PC show. I think that people who are into PCs are going to see a lot of announcements that are going to make them feel interested, make them feel excited about 2021 for PCs, whether it be form factors or components or integrated 5G or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That sort of stuff. That is the feeling that I've been getting. And it's surprising because that's never been the core of CES, but I do think that this year there's a lot happening in that realm. But I think that the consumer electronics, the more popular consumer electronics and mobile brands, frankly, are snapping off into their own events that are going to happen throughout the year. These big shows are becoming less important for them. You get a little sense of that with Samsung having unpacked the last day of CES and like slightly unrelated to it, but kind of coincident with it. But Samsung's doing their own thing. Kind of reminds you of when Apple launched the original iPhone at the same time as CES, but somewhere else. So I definitely think it's something that people are going to want to eye on next week, especially if you're into PCs. But the cadence of products throughout the year is going to be a lot more even than it used to be.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, if you want to follow along with everything that is happening at CES or during CES is probably a more accurate way to describe it. You can find stories on this on PCMag.com, on Mashable.com. Thanks for joining us. And if you leave us a comment below, we will do our best to address them. Thanks so much for joining us. I'll see you next week.